Listening Librarians. I am Katie, and this is Jennifer. And today we are going to be talking about our audiobook theme of Black Love, which we thought would be perfect for the month of February. And to start us off, Jennifer is going to talk about an audiobook that she recently listened to. What was that?
Thanks, Katie. My first book is actually going to be a historical romance by Beverly Jenkins, who is she's one of the leading Black authors doing historical romance today, and she's been publishing since I think the 1980s or early 90s. So she's kind of like the queen of the genre where Black romance is concerned. And the one I'm going to talk about is the first in a trilogy. It was published in 2013, and it's called Destiny's Embrace. Now, it's set in, I think, like the 1880s in California on a ranch that's owned by a family with 3 Black brothers. Actually, I think the 2 younger ones are from a second marriage, which mixes in a little Mexican heritage as well. So it's a really wonderful, diverse family and setting. The rancher who is the hero for the book is Logan Yates. And the heroine is actually a young woman from the free Black community in Philadelphia. Her name is Mariah Cooper. Now, the book starts with Mariah. She's a seamstress working for her mother. And it's not a very happy relationship. Her mother, Bernice, really kind of resents her daughter. It's very abusive, both verbally and physically. So it's not a comfortable beginning to the book. But Mariah finally just kind of hits a wall with her mother and decides, she needs to get out. And answers an ad in the newspaper for someone to come and be a housekeeper for this ranch in California. So she contacts the woman who placed the ad, who was actually Logan's mother, takes the train out to California and meets Logan, and they kind of butt heads to begin with. She's finally going to be independent, and he's been the boss of the ranch, and they just kind of get sparks flying between them. So, it goes very quickly from not quite hate to love. It's a bit insta-loving, but it's a really, really nice, fun, interesting romance set in a period I normally would not have read about. One of the beautiful things about Bev Jenkins' books is she gives you some really interesting history about Black communities post-Civil War. This is a time period she writes the most in. And she really brought in a lot of history about California and the Black communities, the Mexican communities there in the late 1800s that I had no idea about. So that was really interesting. The narrator on this is Sherry Peel. She does a very nice job, and the book is relatively quick where romances are concerned. It's about 9 hours. And like I said, there are 2 other books that I have yet to get to, but those would be the stories for Logan's brothers, Drew and Noah. So that's my historical selection for this month. How about you, Katie? What's your first book?
So I actually just listened to Honey Girl. It's a relatively new book from 2021. It's by Morgan Rogers. And the audiobook was narrated by York Whitaker. So it is about this young woman named Grace. She has just gotten her PhD in astronomy. Go her. And to celebrate, her and her friends go out to Vegas, and they do the whole Vegas thing, and she gets, a little inebriated, and she actually wakes up the next morning with a wedding ring on her finger and a complete stranger next to her. And so she has no idea who this woman is, so she kind of panics and runs to the restroom. And when she gets out, the woman is gone, this person she's potentially married, and has left a note explaining what has happened, but also saying, I don't know what your name is, and that she lives in New York, and that she's a DJ, and here's the name of her program that she does. And so, of course, Grace is kind of like, nah, because she's a very type A personality and thinks, oh, this will be easy to annul, silly Vegas mistake. But simultaneously going on in her life, Grace's dad is very, I don't want to say controlling, but he's a very type A, even more so, personality. He has a military background, so he wants her to find the perfect job for his Black Goddess PhD daughter. And she kind of like is too hard on herself, is how I would phrase it, and decides, forget all of this, and goes on this cross-country adventure to find the wife that she left behind. And it's called Honey Girl because that was what the wife called her in the note. So it's very cute. And I personally have always liked romances that aren't like hardcore romance. So this was like the perfect blend of like Grace trying to get her life together, but then also finding love in the process in a really unique way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I actually read that one in paper, and that was one where I actually wrote down some of the quotes from the book because some of the lines were just beautiful. There was one where Grace is talking about the Mars rover, and its last words before it powered down was, "My battery is low and it's getting dark." And then her wife picking up on that, talking about how, this is how I feel when I do my radio program, that I'm just sending my message out to the world, and I don't know if somebody's listening, but I hope they are. So I really loved how they bonded over interesting things like that. And it's kind of amazing. That was a debut novel too.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a good one. I'm glad you picked that. My second one is going to be a contemporary romance by Alyssa Cole, who, when did I first come across her? A couple of years ago, and I think I've read just about everything I can get my hands on by her because her writing is so good and her characters are so relatable. So the one by her that I chose is Princess in Theory, which is the first book in the Reluctant Royals series. So in this book, which is from 2018, you have Naledi Smith, who is working on her degree in epidemiology. So, we've got young Black woman in STEM and really cool. She is getting these emails that she just figures are spam because she's getting these from somebody claiming to be speaking for the royal prince of Thesolo, and they think she's his long-lost betrothed, and please send us your name, address, all of this information. She's like, yes, spam, whatever. And she finally gets to the point where she's so frustrated by all of these, she just sends an email back that's like, F off. I'm done. I don't want to hear from you anymore. Well, it turns out the emails are totally legit. They're being sent on behalf of Prince Daviso of Thesolo, who truly was betrothed to her at a very young age. She doesn't realize that she was born in and started to grow up in Thesolo, because that's where her parents were, because she lost her parents years and years ago. She was a foster child. But Prince Daviso has remembered this, and his parents are pressuring him to get married and create the heirs for the throne. So he's like, I gotta find out where this woman is. And once his assistant, Likotsi, finally gets some kind of message back from the money, even though it's pretty rude, he decides, well, since he's in New York, he has a meeting, he's going to try and find a levee. So he ends up going to this event where she's part of the catering crew. And unbeknownst to him, somebody else was supposed to come in and do a shift, had to call off. When he walks in, she just assumes he's another student and is like, here, put this apron on, get to work, this is what you gotta do. So he thinks, okay, not exactly the meet cute I was hoping for, but all right, let's experience real life as a person who's not a royal. And he just makes a total hash of it. He's dropping things, he doesn't know what he's doing. She gives him a little grace, but it doesn't look like it's going to work out. And it just kind of goes from there, where he's determined that, now that he's met her, she really is the person he wants to marry. He finds a way to work himself into her life and persuades her to go back to the solo with him. It's a very long, involved story. There's kind of like two parts to the story, the New York part, the solo part. But it's really, really interesting. And I just love their banter back and forth. I love that she's a strong woman and, she's not going to take any BS. She's interested in him, but she doesn't want to get played and doesn't want any of this royal stuff. So I think that's a really good start to the series. There are a couple of other novellas along with the two other books in the series, and the novellas are really good too. They're all read by Karen Chilton, and they're just so much fun. I mean, these are people you'd really love to meet and hang out with and get to know.
That book sounds great. I'm definitely going to have to check it out. So another book that I listened to recently was Dear Haiti, Love Elaine. It came out in 2019, and it is by a pair of sisters, Micah and Maritza Mulite. And it is all about Elaine. She actually gets shipped off to Haiti because she pulled a bit of a prank in kind of anger at school. And her dad is kind of fed up and is like, you're going down to Haiti to live with your Tati Estelle. Tati Estelle runs an NGO that helps Haitian children. And her mother actually happens to be in Haiti with her sister, who's Estelle, at the same time. Now, her mom is a whole other story. Her mom is, or was, I should say, a news anchor, and then very famously on live television kind of had this mental breakdown. So she's kind of hiding away in Haiti, and Elaine has not seen her in a couple of months. She's never been before. So she gets down there, and of course, as a reader or a listener, you immediately go, oh, this sounds lovely. I want to go to the beach and have this amazing food. But Elaine, she gets an internship at that NGO, at that nonprofit, and she, reconnects with her mom, finds out a little bit more. There might be like an actual mental illness involved. But what the family keeps saying is that there's a curse. So is there a family curse? That's the big question. Now, at this internship, she meets a cute boy, of course. And so, again, like I said, I'm not a huge romance fan, but a little bit of romance thrown in I enjoy. So she befriends and then gets a little closer to this young man. And then she makes a couple of friends and gets close with some of her cousins, and then kind of together as a group, they investigate this family curse and see if, so there's a little bit of magical realism in it. And there's a lot going on for a book that if you read it in print is only, about an inch thick, but it was great. The audiobook was great. It was read by Bonnie Turpin, who has done a lot of audiobooks. She did The Hate U Give. Children of Blood and Bone, Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Bonnie Turpin is great. And she really does a good job of kind of capturing the emotions of all the different characters. So if you want to go to the beach, check out Dear Haiti, Love Elaine.
Yeah, I've come across Bonnie Turpin in a couple of other audiobooks I've listened to, and she really is very a good voice actress, especially I think with some of the Caribbean accents. It's really wonderful to hear. And that's a book that I had seen recommended by one of my favorite booktubers, but the way you've described it now adds more elements to it. I'm like, okay, I might have to check that out now. That sounds good.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, to wrap it up, I've got one more, and this is a brand new book called One Christmas Wish. It's by Brenda Jackson, who is another one of those leading Black romance authors. She's been publishing probably about as long as Bev Jenkins has, and she's very prolific. I have no idea how many books she's written, but it's a lot. So this one is part of her Catalina Cove series, which is set in Louisiana. And this one features Vaughn Miller, who had a career on Wall Street, which ended with a wrongful conviction of, I believe, embezzlement or insider trading, one of the two. I wasn't quite sure which. But he was finally exonerated, and he returned back home to Catalina Cove. And one day he walks into the local cafe and meets the owner, who is Sierra Crane, and he immediately knows she's the one. How's he going to persuade her that she's the one? So she's obviously kind of hesitant. She has adopted her goddaughter, her best friend's daughter, because Taryn's parents have both died. I don't remember the exact circumstances for both, but I think her mother's was cancer or some other illness. So she's taking care of this little girl. She has an ex-husband who she just wants out of the picture, but he keeps popping up and being a pain. So she just doesn't really want to get involved with somebody just yet. But Vaughn is very persuasive, and this attraction builds, and of course you've got a nice romance then set at Christmas, which that's always a wonderful thing to do towards the end of the year, a happy ever after sort of thing. There was one section towards the end where Sierra's dealing with something with her ex-husband, and Vaughn steps in to solve her problem, where I found that kind of problematic. She was very clear that, let her handle it, and the way it was resolved didn't sit quite right with me. But I will say it was read by Ron Butler, and his voice, when he read the part for Vaughn, was just so low and deep. I'm like, okay, you can just read me anything, and I'll sit here and listen, no problem. That was a nice quick one. That was just under 9 hours, and I think Ron Butler narrates the rest of the Catalina Cove series, so I'll probably go back and try and listen to more of those, because that was enjoyable. Okay. So that's what we have for our books for February for Black Love. If you're interested in finding some other titles that you might enjoy, I know I've been listening to a couple of different romance-based podcasts that would give you some good ideas. One is quite simply the Black Romance Podcast. And that's almost more like an oral history project where the person running the broadcast interviews different authors, talks to them about their history in writing and publishing, and talks about some of the books too. But then also, probably my top podcast right now is Fated Mates, which is hosted by romance author Sarah McLean and romance critic and editor Jen Prokop. And they cover the gamut with romance. They'll go into individual tropes. They'll talk about and with various authors. They'll do read-alongs. And they're really focused on getting a diverse look at romance, whether it's diversity in authors, diversity in the different kinds of romance that are being published. They really get into a lot of different things, and they're so much fun to listen to. So I really love how they lift up some of the own voices authors and books. It's very encouraging.
Well, thank you for joining us. Next month, we are going to be talking about female authors because March is Women's History Month. So lots to choose from, and I look forward to listening to some more books and discussing them with you, Jennifer.
And I will look forward to listening and talking with you about the same, Katie. We've got some good stuff ahead of us.